Hello everybody, and welcome to another live stream. This is the 35th live stream, and it's great that so many of you are here already. I've seen lots of questions coming up, so I'll get to those in a second. As you can see, I am in my study again, and the reason I'm in my study is just the Wi-Fi is so much better. I've realized I can get a better quality going out, so I'll get a bit of background coming soon. So a couple of quick housekeeping, then we'll get straight into the questions because we just have an hour here. So remember, if you've got any questions and you're watching it live, pop those in the feed on the left or whatever side it is when you're depending on you're watching it, or I think it's below if you're watching it on your phone or your tablet or whatever, and I will try and answer as many of those as I possibly can. If you're watching this afterwards, thank you very much for watching it. I'm actually going to leave the lives up for about 2 or 3 days now, and I'll take them down on a Monday rather than keep them up there because they're quite topical. So I'm only going to keep them up for 2 or 3 days. I'm Gary Bembridge. This is Tips for Travelers. The goal, as always, is to help make it more fun and even easier to discover, plan, and enjoy unforgettable cruise vacations. So let's get straight into the questions, and we'll see a couple of those coming up, and I will answer those straight away, and then we'll kind of build on those. So a couple of people asking sort of probably linked questions. So I'll pick up on those first of all. L. Faraday, have any European cruises been cancelled? We cancelled our 2022 Princess Cruise and rebooked for 2023. If things don't improve in the US, we will have to cancel again. So I guess that's a lot of it. Question is linked to what's happening as the Delta variant starts to sort of wreak havoc, I guess, without being too melodramatic, around the place. So certainly we haven't seen any cruises as yet being cancelled. In fact, if anything, more cruises are coming on stream. So river cruising, for example, is starting up again, slowly but surely. What we are seeing, though, which is going to link to the next question, is we are seeing some changes to protocols. So we're seeing, for example, the cruises out of the UK sticking very strongly to the protocols around pre-boarding testing, social distancing, mask wearing indoors, booking yourself into shows, events, etc. They have slightly reduced the social distance from 2 meters to 1 meter. They're still sailing with a lower capacity, although in a couple of cruise lines that's shifted up to about 60%. So for example, I managed to find out that Virgin Voyages will sell at a maximum of 65%, and that seems across the other lines. So we're seeing lines not relaxing protocols. What we are seeing, though, is lines in some areas increasing protocols. So in Greece, for example, Norwegian Jade went into service. They had originally told passengers that there would be no mask wearing because everyone's vaccinated. That has changed, and people now have to wear masks indoors at shows when they're not eating and drinking, because the rules in Greece have changed. It's also affected some of the itineraries, because in the Greek islands, there is more restrictions. Now, it doesn't affect cruises as much because a lot of that's to do with closing bars early, etc. So we're certainly seeing in Europe some changes. So I haven't seen, El Faraday, any cruises being cancelled, certainly as of yet. If anything, they are expanding. The UK, for example, has lifted the ban on international cruises. So we'll see how that settles down. Of course, what we are seeing, though, is because of the Delta variant, more and more restrictions. So whilst the UK, for example, has lifted from Monday, quarantining. So if you come from the United States or from any country in Europe and you're double vaccinated and can prove you're double vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine. If you don't have the vaccine or can't prove it, you have to quarantine. However, we're seeing other countries increasing it. So for example, anyone from the UK going into Italy at the moment, and that could soon be the case, perhaps, I don't know, from coming out in the US as the Delta variant goes, everybody, whether they're vaccinated or not vaccinated, has to quarantine. So the key message, I guess, linked to a lot of what you're saying is, and I think we've said it quite a few times, is rules are going to constantly change, which brings me on to the question, the JM129, which cruise lines as of now require vaccinated guests to undergo testing? If tested positive, do they all provide affected cruises of future cruise credit and special transportation back home? A couple of really not stress about important points that the JM129 is raising. As I was talking about earlier, certainly expect protocols to change. So whatever we talk about today will change tomorrow, the next day, whenever. It's going to be very fast changing with the Delta variant, it seems, and as people change rules. I guess the CDC in the US is now sort of recommending masks again. So let's talk about the specifics you've asked. So which cruise lines, as of now, require vaccinated guests to undergo testing? Now, it does vary a little bit, and I think Lou answered one of the questions specifically related to some of the lines. But we're seeing, for example, in Europe, every single line, without exception, requires testing before you can board, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. In fact, all the cruises in the UK, which are all vaccinated cruises, you have to do testing. What type of testing differs? So, for example, the Royal Caribbean group are requiring PCR tests, full PCR tests, which you have to do, I think it's 48 hours or 72 hours before at special centers, or you can do it privately and they'll reimburse you. Other lines are doing it when you arrive. So, for example, I'm going on Regal Princess on Tuesday, which I know a couple of other people, and we'll come to those a little bit later, including Paul and Carol, who are here. And is it Nigel Green? I can't remember. I'll come to you in a second. They do the testing. It's antigen testing. I'm going on Virgin Voyages on the 9th. And again, they do antigen testing. So in Europe, everyone does it. When it comes to out of the US and the Caribbean, it is differing a little bit. So I think you might have picked up that we've seen or mentioned there that we have seen Royal Caribbean, for example, and I think around saying Celebrity reintroducing PCR testing for the next month or so. So it's very fast changing, but it certainly seems to be more Royal Caribbean group. And I guess also with the outbreaks of vaccinated passengers. So we've seen a couple of vaccinated passengers on a couple of ships now testing positive. We obviously saw one in Viking in Iceland. We've seen the one on Adventure of the Seas this last couple of days. There was some others. We also saw one on Cruise Adventures, etc., etc. So I think we will see, even though not all lines are requiring it, I suspect we will see more. So I think, assuming that testing will be a part of it. Now, the next point is, if tested positive, do they all provide affected cruises, future cruise credit and special transportation back home? So the answer to that is, it depends. So certainly in terms of the future cruise credit, all of them do offer future cruise credit. Also, if you, for example, have to isolate, you're picked up by test and trace or whatever, or someone in your party before you head to the port, is infected, they will provide future cruise credit. Once you get to the port, if you're tested and you found to have it, then you will, often they will arrange quarantining, etc. Some will arrange private transport, but not all of them will provide that. A lot of them are saying you have to have insurance to cover it. So, for example, all of the UK lines require very specific levels of insurance which you have to prove. Also across in the US, we've seen particularly for non-vaccinated passengers that provide it. Now, we have seen some of those cruises sailing out of Bermuda, etc., where it is covered. So those passengers that were affected on Adventure of the Seas are being flown home specifically. So again, it varies by line. So the critical thing to say is you need to check with your line and bear in mind that it will change. So it's sort of a way of sort of answering a question, but maybe not. Thanks very much, Set CC. Wow, that's amazing. $20, what is it called? Super chat. You're the best. Thank you very much indeed. So let's dial back to a bit. There's lots of questions here, and I'll try and make sure we get through as many of those questions. Lou's answering a couple of questions on the mask thing. I think one of the things that's going to be very interesting to see is what happens with those cruises out of the US with masks. That's going to be a very interesting one, because certainly the US lines operating in Europe have had to go back to masks. So we will certainly wait to see with that. Nigel, there we are. Nigel Greer, I called you Green, I think. Sorry, Nigel. All packed and ready for our ferry to Liverpool, then drive to Southampton for a Regal Princess vacation on Tuesday. So yes, I will be there on Tuesday. I'll also be joining that. I'm very looking forward to that, heading back on that. So I'm Regal Princess next week from Tuesday to Saturday, and I'm actually on Sky Princess in September. So it's going to be great to see a whole bunch of people there. So that's going to be great. Tracy answering a fantastic question here. I've had an alert from Cruise Watch. So great to know that you're one of the people that follows the Cruise Watch, that my price on my cruise has reduced. Not sure what I need to do now, as I've never done this before. For those of you who don't know, probably if you're watching this, you know that I'm slightly obsessed with tracking fares. Cruise Watch is a great one. It doesn't necessarily cover UK lines that well, so I often recommend. There's a few others I have, but Cruise Critic has a good one to use as well. So basically what to do is, Tracy, it depends a little bit on whether you've booked directly or whether you book through a travel agent. Now, if you've done through a travel agent, it's so much easier because you just get hold of the travel agent, say you've picked this up on CruiseWatch, get them to verify and double check, based on your grade and et cetera, but CruiseWatch is normally pretty good. Get them to go back to the line and see what you can get. If you haven't paid your final balance, then you should, in most cases, be able to get them to reduce the fare. If you pay the final balance, or otherwise you might find you can negotiate an upgrade, or you can normally get some onboard credit. Now, it does become a little bit tricky because I've always had a couple of people contacting me. This is particularly related to Cunard, for example, where they are pushing back, arguing that the booking was done on a special promotion and it's locked in and they won't change. Now, I've had more luck with Cunard in the past, having it changed, but it's certainly, that's the key thing to do. If you booked directly, I would phone them up, get your fare, get the new fare, say, look, you've picked this up, there's a difference of X amount, you want to move to that new fare. They might do a bit of pushback, talk to the manager or whatever, but just keep pushing, say, okay, I want the new fare, or say, will you give me an upgrade, or say, will you give me onboard credit? And hopefully that will do. Let me know how that goes. So more people, we're going to have a whole gang on Regal by the looks of it. So Claire, Connor, Callahan, so that's great. So definitely, hopefully you will see me on board. Do definitely say hello if you see me on board. So it looks like Bob is in back from their trip on Viking around Bermuda. So Bill, I'll be talking a bit about Viking. Good to see you again. Bill, thanks for the thorough Viking video. Thank you very much for watching that. We're on Viking Sky around Iceland in a few weeks. Any additional suggestions or tips? So in terms of Iceland, one of the things I do have, I have a video which might be worth having a look at, which would be kind of probably getting you more excited about some of the things you're going to be doing in Iceland. And it's called The Best Things to Do in Iceland or something like that. But if you just go into the channel and search Tips for Travelers Iceland, I think you have 2 videos there. And I talk about the 2 big excursions, which is the Golden Triangle and the Something of the North, which is I've forgotten, which are those excursions I would strongly recommend you do. They may not be one of the included Viking excursions. I need to double check, but definitely do the Golden Triangle and the Northern something or other, because those are incredible excursions. So if you watch that video, you will see those there. So I would definitely look at both what Viking offer as included excursions. Also look at their optional excursions, because definitely those are must do. The other thing I would say to do is take a look at Eat, Sleep, Cruise. Don and Heidi, they all went on around Iceland. I think it was also on Viking Sky, and they have got, I don't think they've got their videos up yet. I haven't seen the videos, but they've got a series of blog posts. So it might be worth checking at those. And because they did quite a few blog posts and things about it, and they will definitely have more very specific tips. So that's definitely something I would take a look at. David asking, have you been to Papua New Guinea? Would you recommend visiting there or the South Pacific? Now, unfortunately, I haven't been to Papua New Guinea. We were supposed to go as part of a 10-week round the world cruise thing that we did. It got too stormy and we actually sidetracked all of that and didn't do it. So no, I haven't been there. I hear it is particularly amazing, but certainly that whole South Pacific area, it's definitely amazing. And definitely, I would absolutely recommend it. I'm trying to think of who I know who's been to Papua New Guinea, but I can't think of offhand. So unfortunately, I can't add more to that, but definitely must do. Joe asking, I've booked a cruise for next year on Iona to the fjords in Norway in summer 2022. Do you think this will be cancelled? Wow, you're certainly thinking ahead. I would be very surprised. I don't know, of course. I would be very surprised, and I certainly hope not, because I have a couple of fjords cruises. I think, we're seeing, there's probably going to be other variants out there, Delta, Delta, whatever. But I feel like we will, we're learning how to cope more with those. So I would be very surprised if that is, but I guess we were surprised we didn't think at the end of 2021 we would still be having lots of issues. But I think you've planned well ahead, and it's the advantage you've got, which is what I think is great about doing the fjords out of the UK, is you're only going to one other country. So even if you're getting into ambers and different types of countries and different testing protocols, you're only going to one country. You're not calling on multiple countries. So it's going to be much easier for both the line, the country, and whatever the rules are to be managed. Tronus asking, do you think there will be a replacement for the Queen Mary 2 in the future? What we don't know that, but I have two thoughts on that, which is an interesting challenge. Is first of all, they have a new ship coming, which is due next year, and at the moment it seems on track for that. But that is not an ocean liner. That's going to be more of a cruise ship style ship. It's bigger than the other ships they have in the fleet. So it's bigger than Elizabeth and Victoria. And so that's coming, but it's not a Queen Mary 2 replacement. My personal view is, the Queen Mary 2 has still a long way to go before they ever replace it. But certainly Cunard and the Transatlantic is the only cruise line that has a liner that runs that transatlantic route. It's a very profitable route for them, as I understand it. It's kind of their flagship route, and it seems almost inevitable that they will at some point, when they have to have a plan to replace it. But it's a long way off, I guess, is a critical thing to know. Sorry, I just remembered I should cover that because people said it gets a bit gluggy. Heather asking, hi Heather, good to see you. I'm very concerned about all the fully vaccinated cruise passengers that are testing positive. Are you worried about this, Gary, for your upcoming cruises? That's a really good a good point, because I have obviously been following it as you have, Heather, thinking about it. And I think what's been very interesting, though, also reading stuff from the CDC, reading the stuff here from the equivalent around what it is and what isn't. I think what is very encouraging, and why the short answer to the question is I'm not worried. And I'll tell you why I'm not worried is, first of all, what we're seeing is the cruise lines have, obviously they're doing the testing. So the important thing is they're picking up these cases. So I think the point that someone did make, I think it was Stuart Chevron, the cruise guy, pointed out that, if you go to a Vegas resort, or you go to a resort in Mauritius or anywhere else in the world, you actually don't know that people are testing positive unless they're showing symptoms. So first of all, they have testing protocols, because all these passengers, I think pretty much all of them have been picked up through testing. I think there was perhaps one case on Adventure of the Seas that was starting to show symptoms and presented themselves before they picked up the others, but they were all doing the rest were picked up in the disembarking testing. So first of all, they're screening before we get on the ship, and they normally have testing through the process. Secondly, very importantly, is they have contact tracing, both either with devices. So you've got the tracelet device, or the around your neck device, or the medallion that we've got on Princess soon. You've got Virgin, I can't remember what it's called. I think it might be called the bracelet as well, actually. Yeah, that's what it's called, tracelet and Royal Caribbean bracelet on Virgin. So they have all that contact tracing stuff. So if there is any issue picked up, they're able to work out who was exposed, and they're able to then test. But what we're seeing is even people that had come into contact and were vaccinated, it's not like pre this whole thing when it was spreading like crazy, or even is still spreading like crazy in some places, even like the UK, and I guess the US, and in fact every country, it's spreading quite a lot. So I'm less concerned, because we have the testing before they get on, so they're minimizing the chance. They have the contact tracing and the follow-up, and also very specifically, which is why I have stuck closer to home, I know other people haven't done this, is also all of my cruises that I have, certainly through until the last quarter of the year, are all local. So I'm actually staying and departing in and out of the UK. So for me personally, it's not that I'm going to be very far away from home. Now, I know lots of other people are traveling far away from home. And to be pretty honest, that has been in the back of my mind, one of the reservations I have is about going further afield. I'm due to go further afield in October to Greece. So I'm not as concerned. I'm not concerned, because I feel like the layers are in place. If I was heading off to Vegas, I would probably be more concerned because of those sort of controls. Also, linked to that, Heather, the other thing is, certainly on all the lines I've been on so far, so I've been on Viking, Saga, and P&O, is they have been really strict on social distancing. Physically, the layout, they have been really strict about getting people to put their masks on, and all that, all those routines, the cleaning stuff. So I'm not concerned, but clearly, if it becomes more of a big thing, it could be. Sarah's in. Good to see you, Sarah. Sarah, as most people know, is my trusted travel agent. Sarah's actually off. I think I can say this, Sarah. it's too late, I don't want to say it. Sarah's actually off on Viking. Viking? I think Sarah would like to be on Viking. Sarah's off on Virgin Scarlet Lady. She's one of the very first to go on. She's part of, I guess, the travel agents. She's heading off on Monday or so she'll be able to bring us some very early insights on that. So I'm very interested actually to find out how she gets on. The Lone Cruiser. Hi Gary, keep up the good work. Just wondering what details you know about Oceania Vista coming out in 2023. Interesting enough, actually, Oceania put out a whole press release just this week on Oceania Vista. It does look amazing. They put some renderings. So actually, if you so it all seems on track. They were starting to share the look of the public rooms, what it's all going to look like. So certainly there was a lot of stuff on Twitter. So if you're a Twitter user, if you search Oceania Vista, lots of stuff will come up from Oceania and lots of other people, or I'm sure if you Googled Oceania Vista, but certainly it did look pretty amazing. So I'm a big Oceania fan, as people may know. I really was very impressed with the Oceania Next, their upgrade of all the ships that they did. I think the ships look amazing. And certainly so what they do with Vista looked really good. Lots of welcomes to Sarah, getting lots of love there. Joe again just asking another question about the fjords. Do you think the itinerary could change? I wouldn't worry about it at this stage, to be honest, Joe. I mean, I think it's unlikely. It's far out. I mean, the critical thing on the point I guess you're raising, which is an important thing, is all of the cruise lines have made the point that, and both explicitly as they've gone in these return to cruises. So when you look at some of the cruise contracts or terms and conditions linked to some of the return to cruise, they very expressly talk about how they may avoid ports where they feel as COVID cases are too high. So that we haven't seen it that much as yet. We did see Viking, where it was the other way around, where the ports got a bit jittery about the ship coming in, but that all got calmed down. But certainly, I think if we saw local outbreaks, ships might say no to some of the ships landing, but it's a pretty long way away. So I wouldn't be too worried. Greg answering now. Greg, I can't answer a lot. Greg is asking about the pros and cons of a Disney cruise. For me, the cons of a Disney cruise, actually called Disney curse, Freudian slip, or typing Freudian slip, oh goodness. I have kept missing going on Disney cruises. Now, I'm not going to go on Disney until next year, towards the end of next year. So I won't be able to answer in a huge amount of detail, but I'll tell you what I have seen so far. And the good news is, Greg, is you're going to see a lot of stuff coming out around Disney, like a whole slew of stuff coming out of Disney, particularly driven and focused on the adult side, if that's what you're also interested in, coming out over the next 3 weeks from lots of bloggers and stuff, because Disney Magic is selling lots and lots of these 3-night, 2-night, maybe even 4-night cruises out of the UK. There's lots of bloggers going on, lots of digital media creator type of stuff on. There is, so in terms of the pro, is they have incredible programs for adults, which is one of the appealing things to me. One of the best reviews I've seen of a Disney overview of Disney is actually Sean and Steph. So, as you know, probably, unfortunately, Sean passed away earlier this year, but on their channel, Sean and Steph, they have a really good overview of Disney. So take a look at, it's called Sean and Steph in Real Life, IRL, and just look at their Disney stuff. I really liked the stuff that they did on Disney. Just answering a question, can you answer my question about alternative lifestyles, how they're received on board? Now, you might have asked something a little bit earlier. Let me just scroll back and see if you asked something a little bit earlier about alternative lifestyles. I'm not sure what alternative lifestyles you are referring to, but let me make an assumption, which is probably a bad thing to do on that. But if you're talking about, say, LGBTQ, I guess, and all the other letters there, I would say, in my experience, they are extremely well received on board. Many cruise lines have very, active policies around equality, both in terms of crew and tolerance with passengers, etc. So certainly, I've never seen or heard of any real issues on cruise lines. Many cruise lines, in fact, I would almost go as far as saying most cruise lines, but not all cruise lines, will have special needs for LGBT groups, the same as they will also enable or facilitate groups for friends of Bill W, so people in recovery, whether it's alcohol or drugs. So those are the main alternative lifestyles that I've seen. Certainly, I've been on many cruises with a lot of transgender, not lots, some transgender passengers, and I haven't seen them having any problems or any hassles. So I guess that is my certain experience. I would say if you have any reservations about how you're going to be received on board, the other thing to look at is charter cruises or themed cruises. So, for example, if it's LGBTQ, there are a lot of charter cruises. There's lots of group cruises. So there's kind of a strength in numbers, if you like, and certainly on many other groups. So I guess motorcycling is an alternative lifestyle, but you'll find many groups will have kind of group cruises. So the advantage is you also have strength in numbers, or you can feel more comfortable. So that's something that you may want to think about. So hopefully that's answered your question. Andy and Kirsty, good to see you again. I wonder if the UK cruises could sell at maximum capacity if they chose to, or if there's actually less demand. It's a great point. They actually are currently not allowed to, or have agreement not to sell at full capacity for a couple of reasons. One of which is they're all abiding by the clear guidelines which are linked to the Maritime, so the Association Maritime Seafarers. I can't remember the exact terminology, but we can probably Google and find it. But there was a document put out which was formed in conjunction with CLEAR and the Maritime body, and was sort of agreed with the government, so the Department of Transportation, etc., with a whole series of rules which did build in very specifically selling at lower capacity. And also linked to that is, even if they want to sell it as near full capacity as they wanted to, they couldn't, because the rules also require them to have set aside a number of isolation cabins and to set aside a number of quarantining cabins. So that takes some cabins out. Secondly, what you will find on every cruise, and if you go on any cruise, and I saw it very specifically on P&O Britannia, is the rules also require all crew, even if they're vaccinated, to be quarantined, so in individual cabins. And so there was quite a big section on Britannia on every deck, which was an isolation for crew coming on board and changing crew. So that's a whole other bunch of cabins taken out. So that, of course, could change. What we have seen, though, to your point, Andy and Kirsty, is all of the cruise lines very specifically issued statements saying that they were going to stick to the protocols, and they weren't planning to shift the protocols. But I think you're right, they're sort of nudging up from the original 50% level. But at the moment, they can't. But of course, they could. The rules could change. But hopefully that answers that particular question. So Heather asked a question: are people being tested when they disembark ships in the US or not? Does anyone know for certain? Certainly, all I have seen, Heather, and I think Lou might have answered it a little bit later, is at the moment the testing is happening only on ships when people then have to travel back to the US. So the original CDC rules under the conditional sailing order did require testing at both ends. So what I have seen, but I will also double check, is on the test cruises that there is a requirement to do that afterwards. So, but if they were sailing with the 95% vaccination, a lot of those things fell out of the way. So if they're sailing with less than 95% vaccinated, they were having to do, they have to do the post testing. So I don't think that it's done as as a matter of what's the word? I've lost the word. Anyway, I think you know what I mean. Queen of Cunard, you mentioned the social distancing on board the ships is very good, but I'm wondering how it works walking down the corridors to the cabins, given they're not very wide. Good point. You have to wear a mask. So certainly on all the ships that I've been on so far, is when you're moving around the ship, you have to wear a mask when you're outside your cabin. So you know people are masked up, and because the ships are slightly lower capacity, or quite a lot lower capacity, certainly on all the ships I've never really had that issue. You pass a few people do tend to do, in my experience anyway, what I've seen is people are still a little bit like at the early days of the pandemic, when people didn't really know how it all spread, everyone sort of crossed the pavements. People do tend to sort of still do that kind of backing up thing. That's in my experience. I'm not sure if anybody else has seen that. Hetty asking the question is, how does Holland America do contact tracing? No bracelets as far as I know. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Certainly what we saw on P&O was it was a very complicated process, because they didn't have bracelets, but they were basically having like a manual system where they were actually taking down people's details. So that was also true on Saga. So if you sat down at a table and was, so for example, Sarah was on the same setting as me with her parents, and I went and joined them for a cup of tea and a cake, obviously. And they then would take cabin number, and then they would go and input into a system. So it's a pretty laborious system. So if they don't have the tracelet system, so what will be interesting to see is, obviously Princess that I'm going on has it, but it's going to be interesting to see if they, how they're moving that technology on Holland America. But it's a good question, and I'll try and find out, because Holland America, I guess, they're selling in Greece at the moment. So I will also try and find out specifically. But it seemed to be the other Carnival lines were doing it as quite a manual process and capturing it that way. The other thing, though, Hetty, which they're doing, which is a little bit big brotherish, so I haven't heard Holland America doing it, but the other lines are doing it, is one of the things that lines have is incredibly powerful face recognition technology on board, and that's become even more obvious through the whole pandemic period. You take your photograph, and sometimes you put it in your app, or they take it. The CCTV tracks you. It's a bit like, so when you have your photographs taken, if you're one of those people who have photographs taken, you never have to give them your name. Now you go to put in your cabin number, and all your photos come up, because the ship has facial recognition technology. And what Royal Caribbean did when they were verifying some of their contact tracing, because they said, I think it was Richard Fain or someone said it, was they were then verifying what the tracelet was saying with CCTV to check close contacts as well. So that may be something that I don't know that specifically. So so there you go. But I will try and find out. Mark, has the UK government advisory been lifted for international cruises? Yes. So from Monday, the 2nd of August, they've lifted the advisory against international cruising, and we'll see how that all stacks up. So that very importantly now means that ships can sail out of the UK and call on countries other than just the UK. Of course, they then have the whole minefield of what countries are amber and require quarantining and not quarantining, and that whole minefield. But it also importantly means that UK people can now travel to join Viking cruise. I'll just use Viking because they sent an email out this week. But you can now fly to join an Iceland cruise, and you can go on an Iceland cruise and get insurance. You can go to Greece, you can go to Malta, you can join a Seabourn cruise, you can join a Celebrity Apex cruise, and you can get now insurance. You don't have to get very specific, very high, expensive insurance. So yes, from Monday, it has been lifted, which is the same day that they're allowing people with double vaccinations to come into the UK without quarantining. So let's have a look. There's another question to see, Drew, maybe I've answered. With the UK government allowing international travel, will lines like P&O bring forward ships being back in service, therefore be more European cruises? Certainly we haven't seen that. All the cruise lines had sort of, I think, Drew, built into their, if you look at their schedules, they had all pretty much arranged to only start bringing back ships into international cruises in September heading into October. So we saw that with P&O, we saw that with Cunard. Saga had probably pulled it forward a little bit earlier. So most of them had done that anyway. I think they had always took the gamble, took the risk that was going to happen. So I think it's extremely unlikely, because also they have to get all the crew back, they have to man the crew, they have to train the crew and get everybody back. So I suspect we won't see that. They then also have to sell them. And, we're already almost in August. So certainly there's been no messaging around anyone planning to bring back stuff quicker. Heather making the point about distancing. Heather, it's very interesting. I think you're right. Having looked at pictures of cruising in the US, the rules are definitely much less strict because with vaccinated cruisers, they haven't had the same layer of rules around distancing. So, for example, even dancing wasn't allowed on some of the early cruises I was on. It is now under the stage 4, it's allowed. But you're right, definitely you could see the rules weren't strict, but certainly, which is a good point to raise, because I was talking about how the cruises I've been on, how it was strictly enforced. But you're actually quite right. So let's go back, because I can see some discussions that I've probably missed some of the questions on. So let's make sure that I've got and caught up. Beth making point, Crystal does not provide return travel positive. Get travel insurance, because it's very, very, very key. As I said earlier, it differs so much by so much by line. So really, really, really important. Lots of points. Bob making the point that come back to the discussion around PCR tests. Both the Viking Ocean and the Blue government required PCR tests to get in. Good deal of paperwork. Seamless, and you have the daily tests. And I think, as I was saying earlier, one of the things that seems to be increasing is, certainly countries, particularly, which I guess the point that Bob is making very well there, is if you're traveling outside of your home country or going to other countries increasingly requiring PCR tests. So, for example, to head out of the UK, we have to do a PCR test before you can get on the flight, because a lot of the countries' requirement. When you come back in the UK, you have to do one before you get on the plane. You have to do one on the second day, and we're seeing that reflected more and more across. So, particularly as you're traveling around different countries, I think it's going to become more and more, particularly with this Delta variant, which everyone's getting very spooked about. Dennis, our South American Antarctica cruise on Azamara in February 2022 is cancelled. Sorry to hear that. We're considering booking a French Polynesian cruise on Oceania. How does Azamara compare with Oceania? They are incredibly similar, particularly because depending on which ship you're looking at, I'm guessing I don't know which ship Oceania are sending down there, but if they're sending Insignia or they're sending Serena, those are the R-class ships, which are exactly 100% the same ship as on Azamara. So certainly if you go on Azamara and you go on one of those, if you don't go Marina and Riviera, which are the two currently bigger Oceania ships, it's the same ship, it's the same layout, etc. So they both, they have the two, especially in the restaurants, they have almost the same rules around. You can go to one, you can go to each of them once. I think if you're sweet, you can go to them more often than that. It's very, very similar. Call it smaller ports as they do. The onboard experience is fairly similar. The dress code is fairly similar. I would say probably where Oceania, I would say certainly they would argue, and I think it's probably true, Oceania would certainly argue their food is kind of a level up. Oceania's big players around food. But the rest of it, it's pretty similar. I think excursion-wise, they tend to be fairly similar. Azamara obviously does their As Amazing Night, where they take everyone on a special activity. Oceania doesn't do that. Azamara has the White Night Party. Oceania has something slightly different, kind of the all-over deck party. Azamara does a chocolate buffet. Oceania doesn't do that, but Oceania then has their big. They have a big a breakfast brunch thing that they do. So they all have their little kind of differences, but fundamentally it's very similar. I'm a big fan of Oceania, so so hopefully that helps you. I'm actually really looking forward. Actually, I'm going on Oceania in February. I'm doing a cruise from Panama to Miami through Panama Canal again. In fact, just want to talk about Panama because I'm slightly obsessed with Panama. I have my Panama video, which I think I've spoken about many times and I haven't put out yet. Will be coming out tomorrow evening, partly because I was waiting because people I thought were interested in Panama Canal again, but actually interested in planning for my Panama Canal in Oceania. I watched my Panama Canal video to remind me of all the things that I should be thinking about for that. So I thought I should probably share that. So that's tomorrow's video. Stephanie Davey, love your videos, which is good to hear. So if I wanted to go on a cruise by myself and have a balancing room, how much extra do I pay for not choosing a single room? I'm not sure what a balanced saloon is. I'm guessing, Stephanie, you mean a normal cabin, like not a solo cabin. I'm guessing. So if that's wrong, let me know. So it depends a lot on the cruise line. And I have a whole video, Stephanie. I have a whole series of videos, but I did one about 3-4 weeks ago where I updated all the advice on solo cruises. So certainly take a look at that. I think it's called, I'm trying to remember, the video is called something like, how do I go on a cruise without paying twice? How do I do it? And as you'll discover, not all the time you get around it. But basically, the simple answer is, in many cases, you will pay double. You'll pay the price for 2 people. So a lot of cruises I'm going on, I'm going without my partner, I'm going by myself, and I'm pretty much paying the same as if Mark was coming along. So some of those cruises, you just can't get around it. And the ships often don't have solo cabins. So I had a choice of doing the Panama Canal or not doing the Panama Canal. So I've paid almost 2. But what I would say is, if you want to go in a non-solo cabin, there's a couple of things to do. One of which is to work with a travel agent or and get them to keep their BDIs ready and to watch out for promotions. So there's a lot of promotions come along, often on shoulder periods, where they will do low solo supplements. So for example, Viking just announced Friday that they were doing no supplements at all, so no solo supplements on all their cruises in August and in September. So I believe that's true in the US. It's only true for anyone doing any of the cruises they're doing in Europe, for example. So that was quite short notice. If you take a look at Silversea, for example, on their website, they have a little tab which is called deals, and they always have solo deals in there, where you can pay 20% or 10% depending on the time of year. It's more restrictive. So that's one thing to watch out for. You can watch out for them yourself, or even easier to get your travel agent. So what I do, for example, is I sign up for all the cruise lines I'm interested in. I sign up for the email newsletters because often it'll come through there, but get your agent to do it. But the answer is, many times if you don't do that, you will end up paying twice the price. But do take a look at that video because it has lots of other tips. It's goes into a bit more detail about the things that you can do. Hetty just saying that by watching the fare, got the fare decreased by $600. So you see, it can be a pretty big pretty big difference by doing that. So so definitely watch fares. The challenge becomes once you paid your final balance, where it's a little bit harder to get the lines to move on and everything. And as I said, they won't always do it, but most of the times they will do. So let's have a look. Penny asking a question. There's no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid answers, I guess. So this may seem like a stupid question, but are cruises air conditioned? Going to the Caribbean, and temperatures are expected to be in the mid to high 80s. So Penny answer, the good news answer is yes, they are air conditioned. But you're right. I mean, ages and ages ago, they weren't air conditioned. So that's why that whole posh. You might have heard the word posh. Posh came allegedly, although it's disputed, from cruising either to India, I think it was originally, where you would go, or crossing the Atlantic or whatever, where you go port out from the UK, starboard home. The idea being that you would then not on the side where the sun would come beating in during the day and heat up your cabin. So you were likely to have the coolest cabin. So you would always choose to sail out port side and sail back starboard, and that's one of the urban myths around how posh came around. But the good news is you will have air conditioning. And one of the interesting things, though, about air conditioning, Penny, is you'll find on many cruise lines, not all cruise lines, you can't actually you can't switch air conditioning off. And a lot of them, the ability to control the up and down level is not always that great or that much change. The other good news about air conditioning for many people is that they many of the cruise lines through the whole process have introduced the new filters. Now I always call them the wrong name, but is it HEPA filters or whatever? But they've introduced a lot of filters to, like they have on aeroplanes and stuff, to make sure they're screening out very small particles and stuff. So so that's it's not only you have air conditioning, but they screen out stuff. Trisha asking, do you recommend using a travel agent to book as opposed to booking directly with the cruise line? Patricia, I recommend a travel agent. I use a travel agent. I use Sarah, who I mentioned earlier, and lots of the people who've contacted me, if they're in the US, have used Gary Pluck from Red Travel. Lots of people have been very happy with him. People I know who've used Sarah, very happy. I'm very happy with Sarah. Sometimes I feel a bit sorry for Sarah, particularly with all these chops and changes that are going on. But the advantage of travel agent, and I actually have a video about travel agents if you actually want to watch that as well. But the advantage I have with the travel agent, just bear in mind, is unlike, say, booking a hotel, normally the hotels, Hilton will advertise that you'll always get a better price by booking direct. With the cruise lines, that is not actually the case. So you will find a travel agent at worst, certainly my experience, and Sarah can maybe confirm this, but certainly at worst, they will get you the same price. So, and it's really interesting because I've read some stuff from the cruise lines is, first of all, agents are incredibly important for the cruise lines in terms of generating, some cruise lines, huge amounts of their bookings come through travel agents. So they're a critical part, particularly for getting new to cruise on board, selling cruises. So they don't want to upset a travel agent, they don't undercut. In some cases, you'll often find, or you may find, that agents can get you a better price. And they can get you a better price either because they are able to, through some deals or whatever, give you some more credit or whatever. Or sometimes if the cruise lines are trying to sell stuff but they don't want to push it out, because as we've seen, people like Hetty and other people track fares, I track fares. So they also don't want to, if they are perhaps trying to fill a ship and they're perhaps doing some promotions, they don't want to put it out there because otherwise Hetty and everybody else phones up saying, I want a cheaper fare. They sometimes will offer promotions and things through travel agents. They might be able to get you something, a better deal. But the advantage is also travel agents can help talk you through the ships. They can help get you in the right cabin. If you have any quirks around a cabin, they can check out things. So for example, I have a couple of people talking to me about they have some accessibility issues. And although cruise lines have accessibility contacts, often my advice is go through travel agent. They can often then, they might have contacts. They have agents within, within the cruise industry, the cruise line that can manage things for you. But it's so much easier, particularly when things are constantly changing. We've seen lots of questions around chopping, changing. So through this whole pandemic period, when something gets cancelled, I will just, well, normally Sarah calls me first, but I'll contact Sarah and say, things being cancelled, sort out. And then she has to sort out, change, get the flight refund, the hotel refund, the transfer resorted, the future cruise credit, find a new cruise, book me on the new cruise, whereas before I was doing all that myself. So it takes an enormous amount of stress and strain out of it. Also, as I mentioned, if I've got any particular questions, Sarah and I guess other travel agents will often, they often have a point of contact in a cruise line they can then contact as well, whereas you don't have to hang on the phone for ages. The reason I like to do that is also because if you're phoning the cruise line, it's sales agents largely. A lot of people ask me if I will do like consultations, and I've always said no, because a travel agent can do that for you. I'm happy to chat about giving people advice and tips on what they should do. But actually, if you've got lots of detailed questions about a cruise line, a ship, an itinerary, stuff, a travel agent will do all that, and there's not normally a charge for that as well. So hopefully I'll answer that. I do have a video on that, Patricia. So if you can look for tips of travel agent, that should come up, and I probably tell it a little bit more eloquently than I perhaps did there. Heather making the point, I was going to raise that, I forgot to do that, is you can find it actually can be pretty, they can be pretty robust, particularly when you're in hot climates. I guess they really crank, really crank up. So so Hetty making the point is around the fare thing, contacting the travel agent and sorted that out. Oh, great! So Bill's already booked on the Golden Circle, so that's great. I would love to have actually done, Bill, the Iceland trip again. I've done Iceland before, and it's just quite amazing. I actually couldn't get any of the dates to work with this new solar supplement. In fact, they're all sold out. So it's going to be very, very popular. Jenny also on Regal Princess. So that's, did I say Jenny earlier or somebody else I saw? The Lone Cruise, yes. So yeah, so lone cruiser tried the P&O, told the fares are flexible, and as I said, I need to suck it up and deal with it. So that was the same thing. I think that it's probably, I don't know whether Carnival and P&O actually use the same Salesforce, but certainly in the past I've had an issue, but I've been able to do it. But maybe now also with things all over the place, they're less keen on doing it, and maybe everyone's getting onto that's driving them crazy. So let's have a look. Lou, let's see what's Lou. Go see Lou. We sell to Alaska in 13 days, fully vaccinated. Now we have to get a test. We must go inside everywhere before we go. So right. So that was the thing we're saying is some of the cruise lines now bringing in the tests certainly for the next month or so. So that's definitely happening. Paul asking, I'm going on Britannia tomorrow on one of the staycation cruises. Do you know what the COVID procedure is? Yes, I can actually tell you. So what happens, Paul, it's the same for Princess, is when you arrive at the terminal, which I think is Ocean Terminal, if I remember correctly, you need to stick to your time slot. They're pretty strict about the time slot. You put your bags in, and then you are then directed to the COVID test area, which is actually underneath the terminal. It's on the lower level. You then go in there, you show on your NHS app that you have the vaccinations. You can get the printout if you want, with the barcode and stuff on you, so you can print it out from the app. You can print it out anyway. You then will be given, if you've got a telephone number, which the cruise line has, through the check-in process, you get a specific band of one color. If you don't, you have a different color. They go and do the COVID test. You then head upstairs. You go through a questionnaire, which you would have done before, the health questionnaire, check that you got insurance, or they didn't actually ask to see it. You then sit and wait for your test results. If you have that band where you have the text, you get a text message. If not, you don't have a mobile phone, they'll come and tell you. You check in, you then wait to board. Then once you're on board, you have to wear a mask inside, except when you're seated and dining. You have to book your meals on the My Holiday app, I think it's called. So you book your meals or you join virtual queues. My hot tip, if you're going to Britannia, you want to go afternoon tea, is you can book that in advance the day before. Do book it because it gets sold out. And then they have social distancing. So for example, in the show, you have to book to go to the show. You have to wear a mask the full time during the show. And then, as I said, the social distancing around. So hopefully that answers your question, Paul, on Britannia. Hopefully that answers the question. Mark, we watch you every week. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. We're currently scheduled for Holland America repositioning cruise from Barcelona at the end of October. Concerned we may find ourselves with another last-minute cancellation. So I'm not sure which ship you're on, Mark, and I guess a lot of it depends on where the ships are. A couple of people have contacted me actually asking about the repositioning cruises and what we're hearing. Are we hearing anything? The critical thing I would say is, Mark, is check where the ship is. I mean, you might know where the ship is. Is the ship actually here in Europe doing something now? Because a couple of people, some people I know were on Azamara and stuff, and they changed some of the routing stuff. First of all, check if the ship's even in Europe. If it's going, that's one easy check. And I think a lot of it will hinge around what the current requirements are. So as you know, when Viking repositioned their ship out of the UK because of the ban on international cruises, they had to go without passengers. However, now that we've got international cruising being allowed, it's allowed in Europe. I guess we're letting if it's fully vaccinated, then the original rule in the US having to do the test cruises is probably not in place. So it's probably, it's probably okay. But my top tip is just check where the ship is in Europe and see what's being planned. Oh yes, good point. Raising the point. If you arrive by car, so a good point is when you arrive by car, you actually get tested in the car before you go into the parking. So that's a good watch. And I actually got that's where I got dropped off. Ken asked in the cruising, where is the best place to eat when you got on board Regal Princess on Embarkation Day? So I'm not 100% sure because today is the first day that Regal Princess sails. So I'm not sure what they do have that is open and not open. But certainly, and I think it depends a lot on your status on Princess or not status on Princess and stuff. But my preference actually on Embarkation Day is to normally go to the restaurant rather than the buffet, because the buffet is normally a little bit on the manic side, because everyone rushes off to the buffet because it's the easy thing to do. But often what I would do, Ken, is have a look at which of the main restaurants are open and go there. That's what I normally do. I find that the best thing to do. But maybe we'll find out, because there's a couple people that I know that are on Regal Princess today. So we'll find out. Maybe I'll find out what was open and what they were doing. And they're making the point again. So Disney Magic are due to cross the Atlantic without passengers in the fall. So that's interesting. That's interesting to know as well. Diana and Edward. So a question that in real time. So I've missed. Let's have a look if I've missed a question. So let's see if I can find that. Diana and Herbert and oh, Heather. Good point. Heather making the point on the crossing says, at the moment, the UK and the EU are not allowed to enter the US. So unless President Biden's administration lift that, they are a big issue. So the hope is that that's going to be lifted in September. But I guess a lot of that will hinge on what the US does. But you're absolutely right. You can't cross at the moment. So let me see if I can find the question that I've missed. If not, maybe you can pop it in again. I'll see if I can find that. I seem to have missed a question. They were asking if I'm going to ask. I didn't see a question. Here we go. Have a question. Found it. Diana and Edward Herbst. Hope I pronounced correct. I love your lives. Whatever question. I'm from the Netherlands. I love the Netherlands. And I can't choose between AIDA and MSC. Which one is the better begin as a newbie cruiser? Ooh, that's a good question. So a lot of it, I think, Diana, depends on what you like from a cruising perspective. So AIDA, as you probably know, is very Germanic in what they do, and so it's very much catering for the Germanic population, Germanic tastes, that kind of stuff. MSC, I would say, is much more, because it has the 6 languages, the multiple languages, it's much more relaxed. It's much more used to dealing with much more international audiences. Now, I have to declare, I have not cruised on AIDA, but I have on MSC. So certainly what I would say is, looking at the AIDA ships and people who cruise on AIDA, I would say AIDA is kind of a little nudge above MSC in the rankings, if you like, in terms of just how they do things. MSC is much more relaxed, much more informal. They are very used to dealing with multiple international groups. They have, their ships, as you know, are very big. They have lots of activities going on, and they have. I would say their food is okay. People love MSC will hate me for saying that, but I'd say I've never had great dining experience on MSC. I think their food's fine. However, if you do go on MSC, the yacht club is fantastic. So I don't know whether you're looking at pushing your budget a bit, but if you're taking a look at MSC, take a look at yacht club, because in yacht club you do have your own kind of lounge area. You have your nice deck. You have the nice restaurant. Probably the best food I've ever had is in the yacht club restaurant on MSC. So I don't know that I've really helped you. I would just say that if you are looking for something really relaxed, etc., MSC is probably the one to look at. If I was choosing between those two, I would have choose AIDA, but that's only probably because to be honest, I'm not a massive MSC fan, and I would love to try AIDA. It's just one I've never got around to. But I think they're very Germanic, I guess, and very efficient. So that's what I would do. So I'm not sure I've really helped you, but I'm trying to think if there's lots and lots of stuff on YouTube on MSC, less stuff on AIDA. So I'm trying to think if there's any good person I can put. I know exactly what you can do. So someone who can answer this question really well is Dario. Dario is Dario Cremora. He has a website and he has a YouTube channel and he has a very active Instagram channel, which is called Cruise Expert, I think it's called. So if you look for him and if you use Instagram, he has been on MSC a lot and he has been on AIDA a lot. And he will be able to give a really good perspective. So if you look him up on YouTube, if you look up Cruise Expert or Dario, I'll put a link in afterwards. But certainly look on Instagram. He's very good. He loves getting questions. He's become a travel agent now as well. So if you look up on Instagram, he will answer your questions. He's fantastic at interacting. So he is the man to ask. So good. He will be the person to ask, and I'll try and leave a little comment from him, and he's a really nice guy. So just ask him and he will give you a really good answer to that one. Someone's talking about getting thrown off. Guy, hi Guy. We disembarked MSC Grandiosa. However, we had to go to the ship at 8 a.m. Is there any way to get a later disembarkation time at our next cruise? Guy, it's a great question, because most people want to get off early and they get really annoyed when they have to stay on late. A lot of it hinges around at the moment, I suspect, around the whole protocols thing. So for example, when I was on the Viking cruise, because they need to get everybody off really quickly, because they need to reset the rooms, they need to do all the extra cleaning, they then have all the testing protocols and so on and so forth, that they are actually rushing everybody off the ship really early. So on Viking, we had to get off, I think, by 8 or 8:30 or something, everyone was off. On Britannia, I think everyone was off by 9 or 9:30 or something. So, and I've seen that with my other cruises. So it's probably more a function of, at the moment, this the need to get things off really early. So the easiest, what I would say is, and they often let getting people off early is normally seen as a perk, as a plus. So people want to get off early. So what I would do, guys, I would literally just go to the front desk and say, what is your last disembarkation slot, and can I have that one, please? That's the simplest thing to do. And normally people are finding them to get off early rather than later. So that would be my top tip. Well, so we've charged all through all of these questions. So, and the hour's gone by. So thank you so much for joining me. Next week, there probably will, do thumbs that said that. Next week, I'm not sure if there will be a live stream, because I just get back from Regal Princess and then I'm heading off on Virgin. I will post, if there is going to be a live stream, I will post that there is going to be one. If there's not, I will post that there isn't going to be one. If not, there will be one certainly the week after. So I may or may not see you next week, but I will certainly post things during the week on the community channel. So thanks so much for joining. As I mentioned, tomorrow there will be a video about Panama Canal, but so you can watch this week's one as well. So thanks very much. Take care and happy cruising and safe cruising if you are cruising anytime soon.